We're at 1 minute. Good evening and good evening. Welcome to the 7th Annual Domestic Violence Awareness Symposium here in the borough of New Milford. I'm Councilman Seymour, and it's a privilege and honor to again present to you a program intended to bring our community together and share information about resources that are available to help survivors, their families, and our entire community. We may be many faces, but we're one family, and together, just by being here, we are making a difference. So for anyone who's here who asks how you can make a difference, you already are. You're here, you're standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, with other brave survivors and advocates coming together as one family. With that, I'd ask our Council President, Ms. Randy Duffy, to please come to the center and read our proclamation.
Status. And whereas children that grow up community effort will shine a light on and put a stop to this criminal behavior. And whereas the borough of New Milford has developed partnerships with county, state, and private organizations to spread awareness and education, and is committed to the safety and security of all residents and to prosecuting perpetrators of domestic violence. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for residents to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, services, and assistance to the victims and survivors. Now, therefore, I, Council President Randy Duffy, on behalf of Mayor Michael Petrino, do hereby proclaim October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in New Milford, and urge residents to know the signs, to report suspected abuse, and to reject and denounce behavior that mimics, minimizes, or makes fun of domestic violence in real life, movies, internet gaming, and other circumstance. And this is signed by Mayor Michael J. Petrino. And I will present this to Councilman Seymour.
Thank you, Council President. Our symposium is presented as a partnership. The Borough of New Milford, the New Milford Public School District, and the New Milford Police Department. I thank not only our mayor and council here in New Milford, I also thank our police chief, Brian Clancy, for his unwavering support and partnership. I also thank the New Milford Public School District, And with that in mind, I'd like to invite our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Peter Galasso, up to say a few words.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Number one, thank you everyone who's watching on the stream. I want to echo the thank yous that Councilman Seymour said. The Chief of Police, I'm working with him all the time for a myriad of reasons. The borough, it's a great partnership, and I'm glad that the borough takes a leadership role with the schools and the police with domestic violence. I'm going to speak from the schools aspect really quickly, and then turn it over to the panelists who are really going to speak about it, and Councilman Seymour. We know there's domestic violence going on in New Milford. It's everywhere. It doesn't care about race. It doesn't care about how much money you have, anything like that. It affects the kids. And if you or anyone you know is involved in domestic violence and disputes, it's hard because even though they may not know how to get out of it themselves or want to, or they're trapped, whatever is going on with their kids underneath, it is also affecting them. And they come to school with it. Sometimes they speak about it, and when that happens, we do alert the police. We alert Child Protective Services because that can't happen. But the toll it takes on the kids, it makes educating them infinitely harder because their needs aren't being met at home. Their emotional needs aren't being met. And statistically, as the mayor mentioned in his proclamation, statistically, they are not on a good road. And that's what scares us the most. Because in the end, we want every generation under us to be better than us, correct? We always want the next generation to move forward and be better and more well off than we are. And domestic violence prevents that. So please just keep the children in mind for everyone that affects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The ultimate goal with creating a symposium series is to bring communities together. It's to build bridges so people can work together as one family to help those in need. It's truly an honor and a privilege to welcome someone who has shown that he is not only a good friend and not only an advocate in his own right to help those in need of help, but under his leadership, the Borough of Bergenfield has become a true partner in this program and in Bergen County to help survivors, victims, and their families. It's my honor to welcome the Mayor of Bergenfield, Mr. Auditorium, to say a few words. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Matt Seymour, and it's really an honor to be here, to be invited, and to be with all of the wonderful guests. I've met some of them last year. I just want to report that last year we had our first symposium, and the reason why we did that, so our team came to this event last year, and we were inspired by the work of the Borough of New Milford, particularly the leadership of Councilman Matt Seymour and Mayor Mike Petrino and the whole team. So we did that also in Bergenfield. It's a small scale. We did in the library, but we were so happy because we know that we were able to send the message. And I know that New Milford pioneered this in this part of Bergen County, and we are committed to working with the New Milford Borough so that we could expand, this awareness. And we know that domestic violence, although a lot of people don't want to report it, but it's happening. So I've looked at the police reports every month, and I see, and it's shocking to see that these are happening in our own community and across the county and across the state. So again, I'd like to congratulate your team, and this is a great start. I know it's your 7th year, and we need to work together to make sure that a lot of people are not scared to come out. Because if we say something and people are not scared anymore, then we can reduce this violence, if not eliminate it all. Again, thank you very much, and congratulations again. And thank you to our panel of speakers. Your expertise will make this become successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the beginning of this program, it's been a true honor to partner with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. We're very fortunate that we have a prosecutor's office that is not only at the forefront of battling domestic violence, but is also at the forefront of tackling issues related to technology-facilitated abuse, which will be our theme tonight. I'd like to welcome the Chief of the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office Domestic Violence Unit, Ms. Vera Dodoni.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Prosecutor Mark Musella, who could not be here this evening, and the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, I'm honored to be here to say a few words and to participate in the panel later on. Domestic violence is a priority in the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. I'm proud to highlight the collaborations between law enforcement and the agencies that advocate, raise awareness, provide services, and work to eradicate domestic violence. This evening's topic is going to be a very informative one. The world of domestic violence is no longer limited to physical spaces. It now extends into the digital world. Technology has become a tool of control and manipulation in abusive relationships. Perpetrators use technology to monitor their victims through smartphones, social media, and tracking devices. Technology abuse isolates victims and makes escaping violence even harder. We recognize that digital abuse is real abuse, and we hope to raise awareness, strengthen privacy protections, and support survivors. Domestic violence is a pressing issue that demands our collective actions. It is evenings like this one that highlight the importance of community support and awareness. It serves as a reminder of the many individuals who live in darkness, fearing their own home. Events like this one are crucial to breaking the cycle of domestic violence. We listen to each other, we teach one another, and keep the conversation at the forefront. We come together to create safe environments where victims feel empowered to speak out and to seek help. This shared compassion helps build a society that not only recognizes the signs of domestic violence, but actively works to prevent it. I'm proud to be part of this collective effort to combat domestic violence and support those affected by it. Because beyond the necessary legal fight, which we do every single day in the domestic violence unit, there lies a profound need for compassion, understanding, and community engagement. I want to thank tonight's panelists and the agencies they represent for their participation in this event, for their partnership, their commitment and hard work in making our residents, our families, and our communities safer. I want to thank the survivors who are here tonight for your courage and willingness to speak out and share your stories. Your strength makes a real difference in the lives of so many victims who may still be trapped in abusive relationships. And lastly, special thanks go to you, Councilman Matt Seymour, who spends countless, and I say countless, hours organizing this incredible event every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Prosecutor. You'll hear me repeatedly say this is about community building, which means that it is obviously necessarily a fait accompli that we need all faces of law enforcement and all faces of our private sector and our community to come together as one voice. I've also been privileged and honored since the beginning of this program to have the friendship and the support and the partnership of our Bergen County Sheriff, Anthony Curtin. He's been with us from the beginning. He's been an introductory speaker. He has served as a panelist, and he will be a panelist here with us tonight. Sheriff, would you please come up and say a few words?
How are we doing? Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? One more time. Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? All right. I know the moment we come here to talk about the victim of domestic violence, but it's a moment like this, I could be somber, but I can also be happy. Happy because we're addressing the issue and not hiding it. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And Matt, if I may, before I came, I called a friend of mine, and they were 16 at the time, had twins. And the way she had grown up was young, got involved with a gentleman who was 4 years older than her. He was a drug kingpin. And she finally got tired of the abuse because he was an amateur boxer. But being that drug kingpin, amateur boxer, he provided resources, took care of the family, and so forth. So she eventually came to the point where she got tired of being abused, got tired of being subject to actual physical cutting and so forth, got tired of the family putting the weight on her to have this money come from this drug kingpin to sustain the family. And she came to the reality that the only way she's going to escape that is to leave. And she left, 16 years old, on her own, reestablished herself in New York because she realized that enough was enough. And my messaging is, through my personal experience that I've known over the years of my life and witnessing what I have in the jail and speaking to inmates, enough is enough. And the only time we can really address it when we recognize it, step out in front and stay alive by keeping the subject matter alive. We can never hide this discussion, and I know it's my personal challenge. I know I've been expressing upon my staff. I know in conversations, of course, with Matt and his everyday doing, we have to keep it alive. We have to keep the discussion alive to keep people alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Her story certainly doesn't need an introduction, because this incredible woman is not only a survivor of domestic violence and not only one of the most courageous young women I've ever met, but she's become a true advocate. And she has emerged as a community leader throughout our state in helping other survivors come forward and get the help that they need. I'd like to welcome Alexis Rulin to speak. Ms. Rulin.
Okay, hi everyone. I just want to fix the mic. So. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, hi. Thank you so much, Matt, for putting together this amazing event every single year. This is the 7th year. And thank you so much to all of the agencies for your collaboration. My name is Alexis Rulin. And on October 13th of 2022, my car was broken into by a man who hid in my trunk with a knife. When I got into the car, I was forced to drive with that knife pressed against my throat. I was beaten in the face as I tried to drive, nearly crashing into other cars. I was told that I was going to be tortured, murdered, chopped up into tiny pieces, and discarded in the woods where no one would ever find me. I truly believed I was going to die that day. And like many of you might have just assumed, this wasn't a random act of violence. The man who did this to me was someone I once loved. He was my boyfriend. But to understand that moment, we have to talk about where it began. The abuse didn't start with a knife. It started with a phone. At first, it looked like love. He texted me constantly, good morning, good night, how's your day? The kind of attention that feels flattering when you think it means someone cares. But soon, those texts turned into constant check-ins, then demands, then accusations. If I didn't answer right away, I'd get flooded with messages. Why aren't you answering? Who are you with? Why are you hiding from me? He asked for my passwords so we could be honest with each other. He wanted my location so he could know I was safe. He wanted to stay on FaceTime all day because he missed me. But the truth was, he didn't want connection. He wanted control. Before I knew it, he was monitoring everything. Who I texted, who I followed, what I liked on social media, what I wore in photos, even what time I went to sleep. He made me delete anyone he didn't approve of, especially men. He'd go through my messages, delete things, block people, and even message others pretending to be me. He also logged into my iCloud on his laptop, so even when I thought I had privacy, I didn't. He could see my messages, photos, locations, and the everyday backup from my phone. I didn't realize it at the time, but he had built an entire digital window into my life. I was being watched constantly, even when I thought I was alone. He used my phone as a leash. My privacy, gone. My independence, gone. And my peace, completely gone. It escalated from digital control to emotional and physical abuse. He dictated what I wore, who I spoke to, and where I went. And every time I resisted, there were consequences. Sometimes verbal, sometimes physical. I was hit for forgetting to respond at 3 a.m. I was hit because my phone battery died. I was hit because I didn't answer a FaceTime fast enough. I was hit because there was men in the background of a photo. That is what tech abuse looks like. It's not just checking in. It's not just jealousy. It's surveillance. It's manipulation. It's psychological warfare disguised as affection. I tried to leave many, many times, but he used every tool at his disposal to pull me back in. He broke into my house. He took my cat hostage when I didn't respond. He tracked my phone. He threatened to leak private messages and photos. He called my friends, pretending to be me, to destroy my relationships. He isolated me completely, online and in real life. By the time October 13th came, I was already living in captivity long before he ever hid in my car. Technology was his weapon of choice, and it worked. That day, as I drove with his knife to my throat, I stopped crying. I accepted my death. I remember thinking, at least I'll finally be free. And it's still heartbreaking to me that freedom from death felt more possible than in real life. But I did survive. Somehow, I escaped. I drove straight to the police station and I reported him. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I didn't know it was the right thing to do, but because I still loved him. I still felt responsible for him. That's what trauma does. It confuses your brain into equating chaos with love. He was later sentenced to prison for first-degree kidnapping. And that's when my healing began. Recovery is not linear. There are still nights when I wake up from nightmares or find myself double-checking my locks. I still hesitate to post online sometimes, or I flinch when my phone rings unexpectedly. But every day, I reclaim a little bit more of my freedom and my voice. I finished nursing school. I became an emergency room nurse, a job that lets me advocate for others at their very most vulnerable. I speak at schools and universities, teaching students about healthy relationships and the warning signs of abuse, including digital red flags. I ran the New York City Half Marathon to raise awareness and funds for the domestic violence organization No More, and I share my story online to help others recognize what I once couldn't. Because tech abuse doesn't always look obvious. It's not always a broken phone or a hacked account. Sometimes it's a partner who insists you share passwords, or who checks your location just to make sure you're safe, who demands proof of where you are or guilt trips you for wanting to have privacy. It's not love, it's surveillance. Technology has changed the way we connect, but it has also changed the way abusers control. And as a society, we need to catch up by teaching digital boundaries, supporting survivors, and holding abusers accountable, not only for what they do physically, but for what they do behind a screen. To anyone listening who recognizes pieces of their story in mine, you are not crazy, you are not overreacting, and you are not alone. I know what it feels like to be silenced, to be afraid of every notification, and to feel like you're being watched even when you're alone. But I also know what it feels like to be free, to wake up and not have to explain yourself, to turn your phone off without fear, to finally be loved gently, safely, and fully. Today, I'm surrounded by real love, by family, friends, and a partner who respects my independence and celebrates my strength. I'm living proof that there is life and joy and peace after abuse. So tonight, as we come together to talk about tech abuse, I want us to remember, technology is powerful, but survivors are more powerful. We can educate, protect, and empower. We can turn tools of control into tools of safety, and we can make sure no one else feels as trapped and monitored as I once did. I'm a survivor, I'm an advocate, and I will never stop sharing my story, not just for myself, but for those who are still trapped behind the screen, waiting to be believed. And now it is my honor to introduce Carissa, someone who embodies the same strength, courage, and grace that we gather to celebrate tonight. Carissa is not only a survivor, but a fierce advocate for others. She is an incredible woman and a close family friend whose resilience and compassion continue to inspire me every day. Her story is powerful, moving, and a true testament to the hope and healing that come from reclaiming your voice. Please join me in welcoming Carissa as she shares her story with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to first welcome everyone who is here today to support, listen, and learn more about the realities of domestic violence. Domestic violence comes in all different forms. In my experience, it came slowly, quietly, and effortlessly. The red flags in the relationship that were unnoticed at first quickly appeared. I'm here today to talk about the old me, to anyone listening who can relate to the girl I once was. I'm here for you, to remind you that there is light and a way out of the darkness, to show you that life after abuse can be beautiful, but first you need to accept it and build the courage that you didn't know you had to leave. Accepting that you are in an abusive relationship is one of the hardest things to admit. Leaving feels like failure, so you hold on to the few good times in the relationship. You go to bed each night hoping that tomorrow will be better. I thought about leaving dozens of times, but I was scared. I've been there, I know. But I promise it's a lot harder to stay in the relationship. This is the chapter of my story I could finally read out loud. I met my ex-boyfriend Owen in the summer of 2019. I was 28 years old. I had a career, I was going to school for my master's, I was working 2 jobs and searching for my first home to buy. I initially met Owen on my friend's boat. I remember him sitting in front of the boat, quiet. He kept to himself and mostly just listened to the conversations happening around him. I didn't think anything of it. Little did I know the impact he would soon have on my life. Fast forward, and we were once again on the same boat with the same group of friends. We had hit it off and went out on a few dates. One weekend, I was with my friend on the boardwalk, telling her about this guy I met. She immediately saw the red flags that I didn't. She had been my friend since 2nd grade and always wanted to protect me. While we were talking about him, I had been texting him, telling him I was at the boardwalk with my friend, and even mentioned the bar we were at. I thought it was just a casual conversation over text. My friend and I continued chatting and laughing and enjoying the night. She suddenly asked, "Is that him?" I turned around, and there he was, Owen, standing right behind me. I was surprised, but honestly excited to see him. It felt strange that he just showed up, but at the time, I was just happy he came. My friend, on the other hand, was not impressed. She felt it was strange for him to show up without telling me. Owen and I ended up spending the weekend together, and I completely missed the first of many red flags. Eventually, we were dating. Shortly after, he told me he loved me. The entire relationship seemed so normal. All of my friends were getting married and living their fairy tale. I wanted that too. And now I had it. One night, Owen surprised me with a horse and carriage ride in New York City for my birthday. I felt like a princess. This is what the relationship I had always hoped for. 4 months after we began dating, I found the house of my dreams. It was close to my family and had the backyard I always envisioned. I told Owen about it, and he seemed upset and angry rather than supportive and excited for me. He told me I was being selfish. He began yelling, saying I should be thinking about him and how I should be buying a house closer to where he lived and worked. I was hurt and annoyed by his reaction. I worked so hard working multiple jobs. While all my friends were down the shore and spending the weekends in their 20s, I was home. I was working. He still made me feel so awful about it, but I kept reminding myself that I was doing this for me, not for him. In December, about 5 months after we started dating, we went to my parents' Christmas party. I noticed that his personality was changing throughout the night. I pulled him aside to ask what was wrong. We went to the basement to talk about what had been bothering him so much. He began screaming over me while I sat on the couch. It was the first time I ever saw him like that. He convinced me that it was my fault because I bought a house far from him, and suddenly I found myself apologizing over and over. I figured he must really like me and see a future with me if he was this upset. The next morning, he apologized and told me he just wanted the relationship to work. In February, soon after closing on the house, COVID began. During this time, Owen had been in an accident and needed surgery. He was staying over and we were enjoying one another, but with COVID came a lot of free time and fewer responsibilities. One day, he fell asleep on the couch. I was folding laundry and all of a sudden he sat up and started yelling. I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. I started laughing nervously as he was screaming, Medicare or Medicaid. I was so confused. I thought he was sleeping until he got up and threw the laundry basket. Clothes flew around the living room. He grabbed his phone and threw it on the floor so hard it shattered into 1,000 pieces. I was only a few inches from where he threw it. I felt the glass hit me. I started cleaning up, still unsure of what had just happened. On the wood floor was a perfect imprint of his phone. My brand new perfect house had a scar that would always remind me of that night. The next morning, I covered up the damage on the floor with a rug, pretending as if it had never happened. He apologized and asked me to buy him a new phone. I told him no. The next few months turned into a blur. The days seemed to bleed into one another. He was drinking, not working, and seemed to constantly yell at me. I thought we just had cabin fever. Relationships have disagreements, right? He would take my phone and threaten to email my job about how I was a horrible person. I clearly remember him looking through my emails, trying to find my contacts from work as I begged him to give me my phone back. During this time, I also found out that he was texting other women and asking them out on dates. I would come home from work and find him passed out somewhere in the house. At the time, I was working remotely and would have constant anxiety, worrying he was going to do something while I was on a Zoom call. I was taking my classes online, and I would hear glass hitting the table. I knew that sound all too well. He was drinking, and it was just a matter of time before I got yelled at for something that was out of my control. Every day became mentally draining. The only time I felt safe was in my car. This is the place I cried, thought, and prayed. I talked to him about breaking up, but he swore he was sorry and it would never happen again. I would get texts about how he loved me and he couldn't lose me daily. Suddenly, the person I originally fell for would occasionally reappear for a few hours. Owen would try and make up for what he was doing by buying me flowers and taking me out. One night we went out to dinner. I didn't finish my drink, so we were able to take it to go. As we were getting into the car, I spilled some of it on his white shoes. I immediately apologized and told him I was going to clean them as soon as I got home. As promised, I cleaned them, but he was dissatisfied they weren't clean. He took the leftover drink and threw it towards me across the kitchen into the white cabinets. The cup immediately opened, spilling everywhere. I sat on the kitchen floor and just cried. It was clear. I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. The rest of the night, I spent cleaning up the kitchen while he laid in bed sleeping. Situations like this continued. 4th of July came around again, another amazing summer day on my friend's boat. Owen started yelling at me about how he had to go to work the next day and he needed rest. The owner of the boat told him he needed to calm down. He demanded we drop him off at the dock. I told him I wasn't leaving because I hadn't seen my friends in a long time. Furious, he stormed off the boat to what I thought was an Uber. Later on, my mom called, telling me that Owen had called her for a ride, but she was on vacation. When he couldn't find a ride home, he began texting me, calling me, and yelling at me. Once again, this was my fault. He told me he was going to spray paint my house. I decided to go to my sister's house that night. He began calling me and texting me, begging me to go back to the house to see him, telling me he loved me and he didn't know what he would do without me, that he needed me. I told him it was best if we didn't see each other, and if he couldn't get help, then our relationship had to be done. I told him that the relationship could never recover, but I stayed. When things started opening after COVID, he took me on another lavish vacation to New York City, expensive dinners, bike rides, food trucks, and an overnight at a resort. I was focusing on the good in the relationship as if nothing was wrong. Denial was taking over. I thought maybe it was just a rough patch, and now he was okay. Maybe he changed, just like he promised. But as fast as it came, it went. The lavish dinner wasn't up to his liking, and suddenly it was all my fault. After an amazing day, I found myself in a beautiful resort with tears running down my face, feeling empty. In one of the most populated cities in the world, I felt alone. Days came and went. I began to realize I was numb. I felt the world around me moving, and I was standing still. Being blamed for everything just became a normal day, and eggshells were the new floors. After another argument, Owen came home with a dog. He said, "I know you wanted a dog, and here he is." I looked at the dog on a leash. He was shaking, scared, and unsure of what was going on. The dog immediately came to me. When I realized all this poor puppy had was a leash and enough food for a few days, I knew I couldn't give him back. The dog became my best friend, a friend I could finally share everything with. I felt some kind of life come back to me. I noticed the dog was terrified of Owen, but was very close to me. I guess that made the two of us. The dog followed me everywhere, and we were inseparable, but he would never come close to me if Owen was around. He saw Owen for what he truly was. September 19, 2021. That day, he went golfing with his father. He called me screaming, saying I was so selfish for buying a house close to my family where I grew up rather than close to the golf course he was at that day. When he got to the house, I was in the bathroom. He came in screaming and stood over me, a scare tactic that he knew worked because of his size. He was 5'9", 250 pounds. I was half that. He was so close to my face yelling, I felt the saliva hitting me. I told him to get away from me. I stood up to him and said, "I'm not afraid of you." He responded, "I'll give you something to be afraid of." Before I could comprehend what was happening, he threw me into the tiled shower like a rag doll. Immediately, the curtain rod fell, entangling me and blocking my vision. He kept picking me up and throwing me back down into the tub, my head hitting the tile. I was screaming for him to stop, but when that didn't work, I just started screaming for help. I remember being able to see the light coming through the window, through the shower curtain. Using every drop of energy, I began to only focus on that light. I told myself over and over again I couldn't lose consciousness. If I lost that light and only saw darkness, I may never wake up. Finally, he stopped and walked away like it was nothing. In shock, I sat in the tub shaking. I looked at the blood on the curtain and felt something warm dripping down my face. It was blood. I slowly stood up, unsure if he was coming back. I stood in the mirror and saw a girl I didn't recognize anymore. The blood was gushing from my head, an image I will permanently live with. I went into the kitchen to get a towel, and he followed me. He began punching the metal garbage cans, screaming that he couldn't believe I made him do that. I begged for him to stop and to check my head. I didn't know if I needed stitches. He refused. "Stop being dramatic. That blood is from your nose." Then he went to bed, a pattern he was going to repeat. I knew that the abuse was going to get worse. Controlling me was his main concern. With a criminal justice background, I knew the last sequence in the abusive relationship. For my life to be taken at the hands of my abuser. Still in shock the next morning, I was taking my life back. That girl in the mirror wasn't me anymore, but I knew I had to be smart. I needed to protect my family first, then myself. I realized, like in a game of chess, I needed to be 3 moves ahead of him. Chess was one of his favorite games, and a game I knew how to play well. He would tell me I wasn't smart enough to beat him in the game because I could never think 3 moves ahead of him without knowing his next move. He didn't realize it, but he was teaching me how to survive knowing him. I went to work the next day where I downloaded an app that looked like a calculator and took pictures of my wounds in the car. When I got home from work that day, I logged into my online master's class. I couldn't think about anything except for what he did to me just a few hours prior. I opened my notebook and began writing. No notes about my class, a note to my family. If I didn't survive his next beating, my family and the world would know the truth. This is the note I wrote that night. I hope nobody ever finds this. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I wasn't strong enough. He hurt me so bad that I couldn't stop him. He was so strong. The time before this was bad. On September 20th, he threw me against the tile in the shower. I split my head open, had black and blues, 3 lumps on my head, and I think I had cracked a rib. Blood was pouring down my neck over and over. He threw me into the tile. I begged for him to stop. Then when he didn't, I just started crying for help. The last blow was bad. I was going in and out of it, but I knew if I went down, I wouldn't make it. I'm not sure why he stopped. Maybe he saw the blood, maybe he didn't want the cops to come, or maybe my prayers were answered. The pictures are in my phone. It looks like a calculator. The password is smile. I love you and I'm sorry. If you're wondering why I made the password smile, it was because it was an action that was so foreign to me. My thought was maybe if he was successful in killing me, I would smile again. I would no longer be a prisoner of his. I'd be free. Soon, my birthday came around again. I knew I needed to get out of the relationship, but I needed to be smart. He was taking my family to a beautiful dinner at a restaurant. I remember struggling to get ready because it was a warmer day. Everyone would be in short sleeves, but I wasn't able to do that because of the bruises that covered my arms, shoulders, and wrists. I remember Owen asking me why I was wearing long sleeves. I told him it was because of all the bruises he gave me the other night. He shrugged his shoulders as if I told him it was going to rain that day, unbothered and completely carefree. He looked at me and told me in the car that I looked beautiful as he touched my leg. When he touched me, it made my skin crawl. I wanted nothing to do with him, but I needed to continue to pretend. He had apologized for what he did and brought me flowers that day. I told him that it was not just something I would get over. When we got to the restaurant, my entire family was there. My mom had noticed a bruise on my wrist. I pulled down my shirt and covered it. I told her it was from the dog leash. As we ate dinner, Owen began to change, but now there was an audience. He began being rude to the waiter. The staff brought out the cake, and everyone in the restaurant sang. An older man commented on how nice I looked. Owen quickly snapped back at him before I could even say thank you. My dad stepped in and told Owen he needed to stop. The walls were closing in around me. I was screaming inside, but on the outside, I was smiling and pretending that I was okay. I knew something was coming. My new reality was to just get through the day. When we left the restaurant, everyone knew something was off. The relationship was like a disease that was slowly killing me, but how was I going to get out and protect my family? I knew he wasn't going to go quietly or peacefully. Every night I went to bed, I just prayed that I'd wake up and this would all be a horrible nightmare. October 16th and 17th, 2021, the night that haunts me to this day. I mentioned my favorite band was playing at a local bar. Owen and I decided to go. Thought it was odd that my dog, who would never be caught in the same room as him, came into the living room where we both were. For the first time, he laid under my legs as I was sitting on the couch just inches from Owen. I was so excited and thought the dog was making progress. But now I know he was warning me. Before leaving, he put a song on. He was crying, saying how much he loved me, and begged me to marry him one day. I told him, let's get through the night. He said to me, this is going to be an amazing night, I promise. We ate dinner and went upstairs to where the band was playing. Owen said he needed another drink and to use the bathroom. He was never returning. About 20 minutes later, I found him with another girl after texting and calling him, cheek to cheek and then a kiss. I grabbed Owen's shoulder with tears in my eyes. I was upset and begged him to leave with me so we could talk. He said no, and I turned back to the girl. I told him that I was leaving. I ordered an Uber, and I sent him a picture of the Uber app showing how far the Uber was. I was hoping this would make him want to leave with me. After I got into the Uber, I asked the Uber to pull over. I went back and called Owen multiple times, giving him another opportunity to leave with me. He ignored me. I ordered another Uber and left. I texted him that he was nothing to me. He said, the music's too loud and I can't hear anything. On the way home, I called my sister. Doing what sisters do best, she was comforted me. She told me to come to her house, but I told her I was going home to sleep in my own bed. The Uber driver dropped me off, and I began locking all the doors and windows. That was the first night I ever locked the doors that attached the garage and basement stairs. I texted Owen, I'm done. Owen continued to make threats over text messages. The relationship was over. It was late, so I went to bed. Owen responded to my text after I fell asleep. He was cursing at me and saying that he waited for me. Okay, that's final then. You're not going to let me come there? Then what should I do? The next few hours are embedded in my brain until the day I die. But dying was not an option that night because my story was not going to end. As I laid asleep in my bed, Owen took an Uber to my house and used the garage door code to gain access. When he realized the door was locked, he grabbed a sledgehammer to break through 2 locked doors. He made his way into my bedroom. Standing in the doorway, I saw a dark figure holding a sledgehammer. I realized it was Owen screaming at me, "Look what you made me do." I got up, confused, nervous, and scared about what was unfolding. I went over the basement stairs. I was compliant to his every word, as he had just been holding a sledgehammer in his hand. As I stood over the stairs processing what just happened, he pushed me down the flight of stairs. I tried to catch myself on the railing, but I couldn't. After landing on the bottom of the stairs, I remember looking up and thinking, this is it. I have to get out of this house. I ran to the garage, the only exit from the basement. I tried to hit the garage door opener, but he caught up to me and pushed me to the ground. He punched me over and over again with such force I was landing on the concrete floor of the garage, screaming and begging for him to stop. I kept telling myself to get up, stand up, don't quit. He told me I was going to die and I wasn't making it to see the morning. I knew if I laid on the floor, he was going to continue to punch me and eventually kill me. I tried to ignore his words and continued to tell myself I wasn't dying. Not yet. Not that night. Finally, he stopped. Petrified, but being calm as I could, we went upstairs. Adamant about a bug trap that was entangled in my hair from the garage floor, he wanted it out. He took a butcher knife and cut it out of my hair. He then put the knife to my neck. I tried to remain calm. As calm as you can be when a knife is to your neck, knowing one wrong move and your life is over. I felt him pushing it harder into my throat. He reminded me constantly that I was going to die. I have to kill you now. I remember saying to him, okay. I had to make him think he already won, just like in a game of chess, trying to get through the next few seconds in hopes he would put the knife down. I convinced him to go to bed. We went into the bedroom, and I laid in bed and thought about what to do next. The bathroom window. The window that kept me alive in September. I was going to sneak out. I told him I was going to the bathroom. He told me I couldn't leave, and he followed me. After relieving myself, he stood in the doorway. I did as I was told and laid back in bed. Time has been a struggle for me, but when you think you're about to die, time stops. Only the next few seconds matter, and those seconds can change your entire life. I began to reach around the bed softly, looking for my phone. I texted my sisters in our group chat, 911, please help. My phone was under the covers next to me. Owen had been turned over, facing the door away from me. I prayed he wouldn't notice. I had my phone. My sister immediately said she was coming to my house. I responded, no. She was a mom, and she had a family. I couldn't put her in jeopardy of being hurt. I found myself lying in bed next to the person who just brutally beat me for 15 minutes. I was silently crying and praying for a guardian angel to help me make it out of that nightmare alive, telling myself I had to be brave and to breathe. At the time, I came up with a plan. If I held Owen and he didn't feel me move my arm from under his head, I would have a few seconds to save my life. So that's what I did. For 15 minutes, while I waited to be sure he was asleep, I thought about whether my life was coming to an end. I thought about the fact I may never have a family of my own. I thought about how my family would find out about my death if I died. But I continued to convince myself that's not how my story was going to end. Dying was not an option. I was going to continue to fight for my life. I was going to survive Owen, not be his victim. I knew that leaving Owen was going to be dangerous, but it was a risk I was taking. It was the only choice I had. As much as I convinced myself I was going to get out of the house, there was no guarantee. When I moved my arm and realized Owen finally fell asleep, I didn't think twice. There was no going back. I was leaving. I grabbed my dog and my keys. I went out the sliding glass doors slowly. I had to make sure that he thought I was still in the house if he woke up. My escape had to be strategic. There was no room for error. I jumped in my car and started driving. I felt like the car couldn't go fast enough. I was praying I would get pulled over. I couldn't slow down. All I could think was that if he realized I was gone, he was going to go to my parents' house or my sister's house, who lived closer. He would think I was there. I called my sister, who I was on the phone with earlier, who lived farther away. I told her I was out of the house and coming to her. She wanted to meet me, but I told her no. What if he saw me pull over? I drove 25 minutes. I was constantly looking in the rearview mirror expecting to see his car, but during that time, I saw my reflection. Crying on the phone, I kept saying, "There's so much blood." As my sister tried to calm me down, she stayed on the phone with me until I pulled into the driveway. When I walked in to my sister's house, she looked at me. Her face turned pure white. She's a nurse and immediately said, "Oh my God, you need a CAT scan." When she said she was calling the police, I couldn't even argue with her. I just sat on the couch shaking, not sure of what she was even talking about. I looked down and realized I didn't even have shoes on. My sweatshirt was covered in blood. Nothing felt real, and no pain had settled in yet. I still hadn't seen my face in a mirror aside from the rearview one in the car. The injuries were setting in, and I was soon going to be unrecognizable. When the officer arrived and saw my condition, he immediately requested an ambulance and for the officer to go to my house. Shortly after, my mom and dad walked in to see their baby completely broken. I went to the ambulance and was brought to the hospital. By this time, both my eyes were just about swollen shut. My family was allowed to come in one at a time. I felt the need to apologize to my father. I came from an amazing family. How did I end up here? It didn't make sense. How did I not see all the red flags? How did I let it get this bad? Why didn't I listen to any of my friends? Suddenly, I felt the phone vibrate. It was a reverse 911 call. The SWAT team was at my house. I couldn't believe what was unfolding around me. I was discharged from the hospital later that day. I vividly remember the shock I felt when I saw my house that I worked so hard for. The dents in the metal door and the basement door that had a hole the size of a body. After walking through the house, instant flashbacks. I went into my backyard and sat on the patio stairs. I took a deep breath, and all I could smell was fresh cut grass. I had an orbital fracture, 2 swollen black eyes, and every reason to cry, but I smiled. For the first time in a very long time, I was alive. The sun beamed on my face. There was a weight that was gone. It was one of the most amazing feelings. I was able to breathe. I felt safe. I was able to be me again. That day I woke up from a nightmare I once called a relationship. It was like the beauty after a bad storm. Things were damaged and broken, but there was a lot of rebuilding that needed to be done. It was going to take time, but the sun was shining and I was alive. I was given another chance at life, and I wasn't wasting it. So here I am, 4 years later. The journey here has been anything but easy. I have permanent nerve damage to my forehead from the beating I endured by him, but my wounds didn't stop there. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I have nightmares of the crime committed that night a few times a week. It's become my new normal. I can no longer escape reality by sleeping because that has been affected. When I wake up crying or gasping for air in a panic, I look around and reassure myself I'm no longer there. When I experience PTSD, I try and calm myself down and focus on the positives I have in life. It's hard, but I've been managing the best I can. I'm overprotective of my family and always keep one eye over my shoulder. I began to avoid physical contact with anyone. I would keep the world at an arm's length and struggled to accept that not everybody is evil. Owen was bigger than me and stronger than me, but mentally I was stronger than him, even with the abuse I endured. I was determined to do everything in my power to make sure he didn't hurt anyone else. The 3 years that led up to the day of sentencing were mentally and physically draining, but nowhere near as much as the abuse I experienced. I stand here today with a beautiful fairy tale ending. He wrote a chapter in my story, but I will be writing the rest of it. I will show the world that life after healing is beautiful, no matter how much someone tries to break you. The moment I found the courage to speak up to law enforcement, to my family, my friends, my coworker, and even people I didn't know, that's when everything started to shift. That's when his world began to crumble. That's when he went from an active abuser to a prisoner. The second I was no longer afraid to hide the truth was the second he wanted to hide. I promise my story will never be silenced, and anyone willing to listen will hear the truth about what he did to me and how I found the courage to end the abuse and take my life back. The girl I was with him saved my life, but the woman I am today thinks of her every day. She's the reason I'm here now. I built a beautiful life where there was once rubble and emptiness. I believe that when something like this happens, it's your purpose to make sure and do everything in your power to change someone else's story so the pattern doesn't continue. For anyone listening to my story tonight who may be hurting, who thinks they are with someone who is hurting them mentally, physically, emotionally, please know there is hope. And know that chances are it will only get worse. If you're asking yourself whether you're in an abusive relationship, there's a good chance you already know the answer, because healthy relationships don't leave you questioning your safety, worth, and reality. Still unsure? Ask yourself this. Is this the kind of relationship you'd be proud to tell your children someday? Is this the kind of relationship you'd want your son or daughter to be in? The answer is no, then it's time to choose yourself and walk away. You have the courage inside you to leave, just like the rest of the survivors here today. I can't stress enough, tomorrow isn't promised. As much as we are human and assume we will be here tomorrow, unfortunately, that's not always the case. You deserve the kind of life you love and always dreamed of. You can have a healthy relationship, one where fear and sadness no longer define your days. I'm living proof. It is never too late to start again. I was once a victim, but now I'm a survivor. Thank you.
Clarissa, you're not done. Please come back to the mic for a moment. Clarissa, you said in your incredible story that when you're afraid you're going to die, time stops. How did you make the decision to live?
So when I was actually in the house and he said, I'm going to kill you, you just have this vision that, you know, I'm going to get married one day, I'm going to have children one day, and that just all stops. You think you're going to die. And the fire inside of me was just so strong. I wanted that one day. That was what I had always dreamt about. I always dreamt about being a mom. I always dreamt about getting married. And I used that fire to get out alive.
And what's your message for other victims who are still in dangerous situations?
They have that fire inside them too. They have that bravery inside of them, and they can get out. And I know you think that you're stuck, that you're never going to get to that point, but you can. You are very courageous. We all are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Panelists, please take your seats. Terry Bottinelli is a retired Superior Court judge who sat for many years in the Superior Court hearing not only family law cases, but hearing applications for restraining orders. Judge, why are we here tonight? Why is it so important that we have these conversations and we have these programs? And by the way, panel, please make sure you speak into the mics. The mics are on when speaking, so the live stream can pick it up.
Okay, it's on. Good. I was thinking about that because Matt sent over a bunch of ideas on what we could talk about and what we should be talking about. And I wanted to explain from my perspective that domestic violence is a profound societal issue that transcends individual households, affecting the well-being, the safety, and cohesion of entire communities. It involves patterns of abusive behavior, physical, emotional, psychological, which we just heard about.
Those types of behaviors exert control over another person, often within intimate relationships. While immediate victims bear the brunt of the harm, the consequences ripple outward. And that's why these symposia are so important, because the impact is on our children, our workplaces, our healthcare systems, the justice system. The dangers of domestic violence are so multifaceted, as you're going to hear about tonight. That's why we've got, Matt has asked people from all different points of view and all different professions to come forward and talk with us tonight. And I was thinking about the importance of this. First of all, this is part of a preventive strategy, in my view. Education and awareness, public campaigns, school-based programs, all of those can teach individuals about healthy relationships, consent, conflict resolutions. Raising awareness helps to reduce the stigma and encourages victims to seek help. Training healthcare providers, educators, law enforcement to recognize the signs of abuse allows for timely support and intervention before violence escalates. From the folks here that are involved in making sure that there are accessible shelters, counseling, legal aid, hotlines, all of those provide critical lifelines for victims. Ensuring the services are well funded and culturally sensitive is essential. Strong laws against domestic violence, including restraining orders, swift prosecution of offenders. I believe that they can act as deterrents and affirm society's commitment to justice. Faith groups, local organizations, neighborhood networks can foster environments of safety and accountability, encouraging collective responsibility in preventing abuse. Economic empowerment, job training, and education for survivors help break dependency cycles and promote long-time independence. Domestic violence is not inevitable, it's preventable. By addressing its root causes and investing in prevention, society can protect its most vulnerable members and build a future grounded in dignity, safety, and respect. That's why I came here tonight, because that's the message I want to send. There's sitting on these types of cases as a Superior Court judge and passing on a decision as to whether or not restraining orders are to be entered or they're not going to be entered. Where are we going with our society? We have to stop this. It's just not right.
Thank you, Judge. Sheriff Curtin, how can we bring communities together to stop domestic violence? What needs to be done? What needs to happen, in your opinion?
As I mentioned earlier in the introduction, communication is very key. And once we come to the realization that our story is everybody's story, and let's come to the table and talk about it, that type of awareness right there, again, brings more focus to it to remind us that it's there. And the only way we're going to address it once it's placed out front. And I know individuals sometimes have a fear of speaking about it. But again, unless it's out front and discussed, unless the law enforcement community hears about it, it's kind of hard to address it. It's like certain cultures. When a crime is committed, for whatever reason, it doesn't share with the law enforcement community. Hence, we can't address it, and they'll just be sitting there in darkness. I'm pretty sure he shared the same sentiment as me, as well as any other law enforcement. For us to correct it, fix it, give you the resources needed to deal with it, we have to have this conversation. As the young lady stated here earlier, the victim has to be heard. And until she spoke out and I think really started to address it, we really started to, herself saw where it had to go. And that's the only way we're going to be able to correct it as a community. We know that the problem exists. and we deal with it. It goes back to the broken window theory when we talk about law enforcement. Until you fix that window, the problem's still going to remain. So let's have that moment and have that discussion.
Thank you, Sheriff. Teresa Johnson, you are not only a survivor of domestic violence and not only an advocate, Teresa, you started the Never Alone Resource Center, Never Alone Again Resource Center in Teaneck. You always talk about the importance of walking in silence. Can you please speak to that? Can you please explain to our audience what you mean when you tell survivors of intimate partner violence to walk in silence?
Hello? You can hear me? Okay. Again, thank you, Matt. Yes, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I went through abusive relationship, marriage for over 28 years of my life. So I want to tell the survivors, thank you for being a voice. Thank you for sharing your story. I started Never Alone Again because I wanted to help a woman not go through what I went through. And here I am today. We started Never Alone Again in 2011. And here I am, a domestic violence organization and a resource center here in Teaneck, New Jersey, where we provide services to hundreds of women, hundreds of families in need, domestic violence support resources. And one of the things I always tell the women, they're like, Ms. Johnson, but what do I do? And I always say, plan it safe and move in silence. You don't need to tell the world what you're doing. You don't need to let people know where you're going, especially on social media, especially the social media platforms. Move in silence. Take your power back. And have a safety plan. And then plan it safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. And as you bring up safety planning, I'd like to ask Karina Arenada with Bergen County Alternatives to Domestic Violence, who is also a New Milford resident, so she has a special place in our program as being one of the many faces of our borough. Ms. Arenada, could you please talk to what does it mean to safety plan, and how can victims do so?
Thank you. I think safety planning is such an important aspect when a survivor or a victim is trying to leave their abuser. If we want to take it from the tech perspective, it is not so different from physically leaving a relationship when you digitally disconnect from your abusive partner. It can be just as dangerous once the abusive party realizes the power and control that they're losing in that situation and in that relationship. And it's just as important to reach out to your local DV agencies, speak to an advocate, work with law enforcement, reach out to the court system, and there's so much that you can do. You have so much power, and you're really able to do a lot. So not to feel alone, but safety planning definitely is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Bottinelli mentioned signs of abuse as being a very important factor for all of us to look for. Lieutenant Scott Petrie of the New Milford Police Department, in your experience, what are the physical signs of abuse? What are signs of other types of abuse? And how can the police help?
Thank you, Matt. Well, the easiest ones are the physical ones that are outwardly visible to us as officers when we show up to the scene. There's a bruise, there's a cut, there's a visible sign of injury. That's the easy stuff. We call that the black and white. We make that arrest. The harder stuff is when you have something like criminal restraint, taking a cell phone, cyber harassment. Those type of things are a lot harder to detect, and sometimes they take a little bit more training and a little more experience to recognize those signs. So in law enforcement,
We take it very seriously, domestic violence. We train on it. You know, we use the experience of our older officers to tell this younger generation to listen to the victims, to be good listeners, and to listen to their stories and listen to their, and look for the signs of abuse that may not be evident. That's especially important when we talk about complaint of pain. Look for that guarding of an injury that they might be trying to hide, and to really spend the time and listen to what the victims are saying.
And Lieutenant, does a victim have the option to file a criminal complaint even in the absence of a physical sign of injury? And if so, when?
Absolutely. Everyone has the option to file for a criminal complaint. We would direct them to our court if there was something that we couldn't do for them right away. So every victim has the right to file a criminal complaint with our court system. We would direct them, we would help them. If it was for an instance of applying for a restraining order that was in a non-emergent situation, we would help them, bring them to the court, direct them to the courthouse, go as far as to escort them up to the floor, right to the chambers of the judge.
Thank you, Lieutenant. We're also joined tonight by a municipal prosecutor who also practices in private practice as a family law attorney, and as a result has experience guiding victims and survivors to apply for restraining orders. Ms. Savvy Dara, could you please speak to, from both the criminal side and also from the civil side, how can a victim get the protection of a restraining order? And so is it also helpful as a component to pursue a criminal complaint?
Thank you, Matt. So as far as domestic violence restraining orders go at the Superior Court level, there are lots and lots and lots of domestic violence attorneys out there who offer free consultations that can help victims walk through the system, what the system looks like, what the requirements are in order to qualify for a temporary restraining order, and what going to court looks like, and how to prepare you. And preparation is key, right? A lot of times, this is going to be the victim's first foray and first experience with dealing with the court system. And even practicing attorneys will tell you, going to court is a scary thing. It's an intimidating thing. So for somebody who doesn't do that professionally, 5 days a week for years at a time, I imagine it's incredibly intimidating. So talk to attorneys, talk to domestic violence advocates, talk to friends and family, because you'd be surprised how many other people have experiences going through the system. As far as how I approach speaking to victims in my role as a municipal prosecutor, I don't want to re-traumatize these victims. They've already been through a lot. So when they come in to municipal court, that's for something different than a domestic violence restraining order that's dealt with at the Superior Court. Sometimes incident to the abuse that led to them getting a restraining order, there are criminal charges that are brought against the defendant, such as harassment or a simple assault charge or something of similar ilk that I deal with. The more severe charges would be dealt with by the county prosecutor's office. But when I first meet the victim that is the victim of a municipal court level criminal charge, I explain what the possibilities are going forward, and I advise them what their role would be in me prosecuting those charges against the defendant, and I ask them how they would like me to proceed. And I tell them, listen, this is not jeopardy. You don't need to buzz in with an answer right away. Take some time to think about it, because I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't want you to be re-traumatized by the system. Here's how you can contact me. And if you need some time to think about it, talk to family members and friends about it. You let me know how you'd like me to proceed before our next court date, and that's how I take it from there.
Thank you. Verididoni is the chief of the Domestic Violence Unit in the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. Prosecutor Adoni, we heard a few moments ago about cyber harassment. What is cyber harassment, and what is technology-facilitated abuse?
Thanks, Matt. So cyber harassment sometimes takes the ordinary meaning, which the law differs from what we think cyber harassment. So we think that cyber harassment is any type of harassing communication that is in online capacity, but it's not. Cyber harassment under our New Jersey laws is when an individual is either threatening his victim through online communication, or posting or lewd conduct or lewd images of the victim, or any type of sexual in nature type communication that involves imaging. That's cyber harassment, and any type of threat to commit violence through online communication. So just simple harassment via text or via social media, that's the ordinary plain harassment. It gets elevated to a felony, cyber harassment, if there are threats or lewd conduct involved. And that usually gets prosecuted at the county level. The ordinary plain harassment would be prosecuted generally at the municipal level.
Thank you, Prosecutor. We're also joined by Catherine Miller, who is the Senior Staff Attorney at the Center for Hope and Safety, formerly known as Shelter Our Sisters. Kate, we live in a society now where technology connects us. We communicate with each other and with the world through our phones, through our tablets, and through all platforms on social media. What is your advice for survivors to stay safer online in this digital world, while at the same time not losing that connection with everyone else through their own social media?
I mean, I think it's very survivor specific and very situation specific. One thing that I really picked up on both of our survivor stories were about how control can start with social media, like always sharing your location and things. And sometimes it can be fine to share a location, but there is a difference between sharing your location because you want to with a healthy partner versus a partner telling you, oh, I have to see your location to make sure you're safe, or seeing that if it's not something that you're initiating. So if they're using your social media to control you, that's when you start thinking that, maybe this isn't such a good thing. So social media is wonderful. Lots of us have social media. We use it to connect with our communities. But you also want to make sure that it's something that you're owning and that you're appreciating and that you're loving, and that you're not doing it for your partner. And if you choose to share your password with your partner truly because it's something that you want to do, that's fine. But when your partner is asking for it, that's a sign maybe just to think about it and think if it's a good thing, if it's something that brings you happiness.
But Kate, what happens if an offender begins posting on their own social media with derogatory comments, loosely referencing a victim, but they don't send that message specifically to the victim? Is that harassment or no?
It's entirely context dependent. I would recommend contacting either your local DV agency or law enforcement, depending on what that is.
We're joined by Lil Corcoran, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Rights Information Center. Lil, could you please talk to how can victims, while being harassed and while even being stalked, find a peace and calmness to seek the help that they need?
Oh my goodness. It's almost impossible to be in peace or calm when you're being stalked and harassed and abused, which is why so many of our victims present to our legal friends looking like they're the crazy ones, right? So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump into a few thoughts I had while everybody was talking, Matt. First of all, to the two women who spoke earlier tonight and told your stories, thank you for sharing that with us. It was very intense. And I've been doing this for a long time, 35 years, and I was really moved by your stories and almost vicariously traumatized. You would think that that wouldn't happen to sort of a grizzled vet, and I'm sure there are other people in the audience that had similar reaction to listening to your story. So thank you for having the courage to share that and to doing the advocacy work that you're doing. I want to add, if I could just sort of piggyback on what you were both talking about, is, and it came up a couple of times about leaving. You can leave, you can have power, you have courage. Leaving is fucking hard. And it's fucking dangerous, and that's why women don't leave. Many times. It takes an incredible amount of bravery, and typically victims have been isolated enough that by the time they have to come up with a plan, who are they talking to get that plan? How are they getting that help? All of a sudden they're isolated and alone. How did they get there? So while most, thank God, victims of domestic violence are not killed, we know, the research is clear, that the ones that are killed were the ones who were at the point of leaving. And if they weren't killed, that was the most dangerous time. So when you say to somebody who's spent their entire relationship with you, I am going to control you, and you say to them, I'm leaving you now, oh, they're going to go, okay, honey, you're right. I've been such a jerk. Let me let you go. They don't. They step it up. They increase their power and control. So I would really love to see more discussion about, and I understand the question, why doesn't she leave? I really do. But for all these years I've been doing this advocacy, I don't know why we still don't ever get to, why does he do that? Why is he abusing her? And what is he going to do to change? The onus is always on the victim to talk to somebody. Now, having said that, we're really good people to talk to, right? Do not try to do this alone. Find your support. Find the right support. If you tell somebody and they say, well, you know, he's this, and maybe he's that, stop talking to them. Go to ADV, call them, call us, call Never Alone Again, or whatever county you're from, or advocates that get it and understand. Because I will tell you something else, and maybe you know this, lawyers, but our clients often feel abused by the legal system because batterers have figured out how to weaponize that. You go for a restraining order, the next day he files for a restraining order. The next day he files a complaint. The next day he files, oh, what do you call those things? When you go back and you amend, another amendment, and an amendment, and an amendment, and now you have to keep taking off of work, and you have to keep going to court, you have to keep... So now they're using court and the police to jam you up and to continue to control you. So, as you were saying, walk softly, I think it's really important to meet with an advocate to talk about how to do this strategically. You're using it, or I think you said walk softly, right, or quietly? Look, she's being quiet. Quietly? I call it being strategic, right? If you're going to leave, you want to think about it in advance, and we can help you do that. Advocates know how to help you do that. When it comes to digital, what a tool for batterers. I'm old enough to remember when a batterer who tied a digital camera to a pole and held it up to a window to spy on his girlfriend. And then when she called the cops, he was stupid enough to drop the camera and leave, which he left the evidence there. Those days are done. They're not stupid like that anymore. They're usually smarter than us. So you really need help with that. I'm going to direct you to the leaders, in my opinion, on that are the National Coalition to End Domestic Violence. I brought flyers in the back about their organization. They have a lot on safety planning for the digital abuse that goes on, which is almost impossible for all of us to be able to try to keep up with because there's something new every day. So they're the resource to go to. In terms of Bergen County and surrounding areas, we have support groups online for women survivors, and we also have a horse therapy support group twice a month. That information is also in the back, the flyers I bought. And I will tell you, if you can't remember all that or the flyer's gone, womensrights.org, we have a calendar there that shows you all our groups. Please try not to do this alone because isolation is a tool that's used by controlling people. Find your support group, but the ones that will support you in getting out. And I have a lot more to say about this, but I know I've been teaching, I can teach a 40-hour class on domestic violence and run out of time to tell you everything that's in this head of mine around this topic. So Matthew, where are you?
I'm over here. So, but Lil, how would you, this question could be either for you, Lil, or even Teresa. How do you tell a young woman, for example, that being asked to share her location with her boyfriend is not always a sign of love or care, but actually a form of control?
So that's a good question, because I think every single form of control could also, in a healthy relationship, is also normal behavior, right? I have, my family's on Life 360, we all know where each other are, so it's also normal behavior. Calling someone when you're in love all the time is normal behavior, right? When you're in love, until you're married for a few years, and they're like, stop calling me, right? So everything that becomes controlling at the beginning of a relationship is normal behavior, so it takes a while to figure out that this is now becoming a pattern of control. So just educating people with that and doing what I call DV 101 or Domestic Violence 101, and just sort of explaining that these red flags in the beginning of a relationship are not red flags. They're fun. Oh, he likes the way I'm dressed. He likes where I'm, what I'm doing. He loves me, blah, blah, blah. You don't realize that this is about to become controlling. And so I think having advocates that can do safety planning, point out the red flags, start saying, okay, when has this now crossed over into a fun thing that you do in a relationship, to a little bit more of an obsessive control? Because once it starts, once you notice the pattern, it's not going to go backwards. It's going to keep getting worse. It may take some time to get there, but it will happen.
And Karina, what are some things that survivors should do to intervene early, to help stop cyber harassment or cyber stalking before it escalates and becomes physical violence?
Yeah, so I want to go back a little bit to social media, and that question of, why don't we just ask survivors and victims to change their phone, get rid of social media, just completely be off the grid. And without knowing everybody in this room, I can almost guarantee that everyone in here has a cell phone. Most everyone in here has social media. I don't know anyone that would want to be completely off the grid. I think that's such an unfair question that we ask victims and survivors to do. And that oftentimes is such a lifeline and a connection to their family, their friends, support groups, whatever it may be, even if it's like on Instagram scrolling and finding a funny video, whatever it is, that could be so helpful in that situation. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. I'm asking, in terms of early intervention, what steps can and should be taken to intervene early to prevent the digital abuse from escalating and becoming physical?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think oftentimes we forget how much we have in the digital world and how much we, with our friends and family and loved ones, how much we're connected. So it's important to think about that. It's important to think about what apps do we have connected. Now with new cars, it's, you have CarPlay and things like that, that you're so easily connected. We live in an age where everyone is connected at all times. My family is from Chile, and I could call my family right now, and they're 11 hours away on a plane, where that used to not be the case. So thinking about things like that and taking those things into account, and just, even something as simple as changing your passwords. That's something that oftentimes can be so effective. There's a lot of research that shows that an abuser that is choosing to use tech-facilitated abuse, when they see it's not working and they're not really able to get to that person, they'll find another way, to contact that person. So if it's not working, they'll find another way, unfortunately. So something like changing your passwords can be really effective as well. And again, like many of us up here have said, reach out to your local DV agencies, reach out to advocates. We are here. We want to help you. We want to support you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Savvy, is there a pathway for a victim who's not in a dating relationship to seek protection if they're a victim of cyber harassment?
Yes, so there's something called the Victims Assistance and Survivor Protection Act, or VASPA. It's a relatively new law. It went into effect January 1st of 2024, so we're just coming up on 2 years now. It was formerly called SASPA because it was more centered around sexual abuse, and it was originally thought to be commonly tied to when there was instances of sexual assault and sexual abuse among students who were in college together, who weren't covered under the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, which typically covers spouses, ex-spouses, ex-significant others, or people who have a child in common, current housemates or former housemates, those kinds of relationships. So VASPA was created for people who don't really fall into any of those categories, and it offers protections for, I believe, Madam Prosecutor from the County Prosecutor's Office was talking about this before, sexual violence, stalking, and cyber harassment. And victims and survivors who are 18 years or older may apply for a VASPA order, or a parent or guardian may apply on behalf of someone who is under 18 or who may lack capacity to advocate for themselves. And you do not need an attorney to apply for one, although it's a good idea to, again, talk to one of these advocacy groups who are present at the table here, or reach out to an attorney and have a consultation with one. That never hurts.
Thank you. Savvy just mentioned SASPA, which was a statute that also offered protection to victims of sexual violence. Sexual violence is one of the categories of domestic violence that is cognizable for a restraining order. But we're also joined tonight by Mike Payano of Northern New Jersey Healing Space, which is an organization dedicated towards helping victims of sexual assault. Mike, can you please speak to how digital violence impacts your work at Healing Space?
Sure. I mean, we go out all the time into the community. We talk about digital violence and how it kind of creeps into sexual violence as well, because again, my agency is specific to sexual violence. And so, for example, we have things like image-based sexual abuse, right? So people taking real or even synthetic photos, because synthetic photos are also now being created, to sometimes blackmail someone, you know, and kind of make them do favors for them or pay them a certain amount of money, things like that. We call it sextortion. So sometimes people will, again, use fake images and even real images that someone might have sent them to take advantage of the other person. And this also happens in domestic relationships as well. But we also see that in schools, honestly, like with kids. It's not just in these domestic relationships, it's also sometimes happening in our own schools here in Bergen County. It does happen in our own schools here in Bergen County. I can tell you that for a fact, okay? So yeah, we have sometimes things like, I know there's a lot of talk now about AI, for example, and there's a lot of uses for AI that some people would consider good, right? And there are also uses for AI for things like putting someone's face on a nude body or picture, and again, making this fake photo. Sometimes they call it a deep fake. And so you have all these different things happening now in our community, even to the point where this type of thing is being used for child pornography as well. And people aren't talking about that enough, but these things are happening. All of these, AI, for example, is just evolving at such a fast rate and is becoming very realistic, as some of us may know. And so these things are impacting sexual violence, and they are very heavily impacting domestic violence as well. Again, the forging of fake messages and voice messages, things like that, these things do happen. So it might not be apparent, but a lot of people are in these digital spaces and are very, very, very savvy with the type of way they kind of use technology to kind of like use it against the victim or the survivor. So, yeah.
Thank you. We've been talking about cyber harassment and even cyber stalking. But this question is for Carol Weissman, who is Senior Legal Director, Senior Staff Attorney at Northeast New Jersey Legal Services. Carl, can you talk to other forms of technology-facilitated abuse? For example, when would merely mounting a camera and aiming that camera at someone else's window cross the line from free speech to potential harassment?
Thanks, Matt. You've just asked me to do the most broad definition that exists for all this technology, because the problem nowadays is that a lot of the technology, or probably all of it, can be used to control and be coercive. And that, when Lil was talking before about when the line is crossed, I think, just to go to her comment for a minute, if you feel in your gut that it's extending and going beyond a line, it probably is. If you feel it's too much of a control, too much of asking where you are and what you're doing, then you should be thinking these are red flags. Cameras now are big, Ring cameras and other cameras. Technology can be used, what's seemingly innocent that someone may say they're going to put up to, quote unquote, make sure they can track their packages, can be pointed at a victim's residence and be used surreptitiously to be able to spy on that victim and to intrude in their lives. The point that has to be crossed is, when is that defined as quote unquote free speech, and when is that going to be determined to be an abuse and control of the technology? And a lot of this is going to come down to what is the intent and what can be proved in a court as to what it is that the abuser is doing and how the abuser is doing it. So for example, I had a technology case and the abuser seemed to say, well, I'm just pointing the camera down at where, I'm looking for packages, I don't want them stolen. And we were, able to show that by trajectory, and you may have to get into geometry, God forbid attorneys do math, but you may really have to get into that kind of a specific to show that this was not just innocent, that they were particularly aiming it at the victim, and that the intent, because under the statute you have to show an intent to alarm, an intent to harass. And for some of the social media postings that we were talking about earlier that Matt had mentioned, how are you going to prove and when are you going to show that the intent of the person, even though it may not have been directed at the victim's social media per se, that's where it's all going to boil down to. And I'm sure Judge Bottinelli is going to be able to tell everyone here how difficult that evidence is to present before him. So, but the key is keep that evidence. Always preserve anything you have. It's really important in the digital age. Never, ever, ever delete anything, no matter how angry you might get or how you feel you can't deal with your abuser. That evidence is going to help you in the long run. And hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Carol. And it was a perfect transition over to Judge Bottinelli. So, Judge, how does a court determine the requisite intent in order to determine has the line been crossed?
The lieutenant said before, part of this is from experience, because it's very easy to make allegations. In fact, we really haven't talked about this, but there's two separate ways that domestic violence is handled in the courts. First is in a civil setting, which is a violation of the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, and you can obtain a restraining order against an individual. It can be financial support in certain circumstances. But the need for that is a second prong. First, you have to show a violation. The second part is that there's a need. The proofs that need to be shown are, more likely than not, preponderance of the evidence. If there is a complaint alleging domestic violence that's escalated to one of the underlying offenses, and assault was the easiest one, that's got to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt that a person can go to jail for. So we have to be aware of the standards that are going to be held. What needs to be shown? Two things. Violation of the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, and there's a laundry list of, I don't know what the number is now, like 15 things, all different things that can constitute domestic violence. It's not violence in the sense that we think of somebody grabbing somebody and punching them out or grabbing them around the neck. It can be harassment and the different types of harassment. People have been talking about tonight. Cyber harassment. Does cyber harassment rise to the level where a person needs to get protection? How do you prove that? It's very difficult. You can just turn on your phones right now and type in spoof, S-P-O-O-F, and you'll be directed to programs that are out there that will enable you to make communications with another person, and you can type in false information about where it's coming from, who it's coming from. So the person who receives the message thinks it may be coming from you, but actually it's somebody else that's using your name. So the courts it's a bit of a dilemma. We have to be able to make sure there's a foundation to demonstrate that whatever is being shown or whatever is being said is being done by the person who's being accused of that. Nowadays, I just came back from doing a program I was teaching in Italy. We are so far advanced when it comes to domestic violence than other countries. And one of the persons who started talking about domestic violence and proofs, he had on glasses, eyeglasses. They looked like regular eyeglasses. And there were cameras. And all he did just touch the side, and he's recording what's going on. You wouldn't know unless you saw the reflection off of the lens that it was recording. But you know, these can be used for great purposes, or they can be used to really terrorize somebody. So what proofs are there? You really have to talk with somebody who knows what they're doing in order to prove your case. It's easier said than done sometimes. People do stupid things, especially young kids. What they do with their cameras and what I'm going to send a private picture to you because I love you and I know you're not going to show it to somebody else. I love you, I love you. Now change. We've got this is scary. I really worry about my grandchildren with what goes on. I had cases where I'm going to call them young kids, 18 years old, showing each other pictures. They get a fight. Ends up in a domestic violence complaint. Not a criminal domestic violence, but civil. The boy, who was upset and decided he was going to post the pictures that his girlfriend had sent him, post them on the internet, he wanted to be a cop. You get a domestic violence complaint against you, I think that dream is going to be gone. That's why education is so important. That's why these symposia are so important. The easy stuff is the ones that the lieutenant said before. Listen, you see somebody's got a fat lip, a black eye, cuts, bruises. Those are the easy ones. It's the other stuff that's out there. And the more people are educated about it and what the signs are, the better society is going to be. There's no black and white here, Matt. It's just, it depends on what can be demonstrated by a more likely than not standard to get that restraining order issued.
Thank you, Judge. Lieutenant Petrie, what can and should an individual do? For example, a teenager who feels that she is being tracked through her car, who has discovered a tracking device in the vehicle and isn't sure how to remove it.
Bring it to us. We've become experts. In the last 3 years, we've found more air tags in victims' personal vehicles, property, jackets, purses than I ever thought possible. We're becoming technological experts by default. When the judge is talking about how do we prove these things, we use the subpoena process and we get as much information as we can from these technology companies. And we become pseudo-experts in the language of technology. One of the things that we've done to bring a case forward was to become experts in IP addresses. There's IP addresses out there that can go towards cell phone towers, which are, can be tracked. There's ones that go to your homes, which can lead us to the offenders directly. So we've become pseudo-experts in these things. So if a victim was to find something on their phone or in their vehicle or personal belongings that is a tracking device, report it to us, bring it to us, and we will start the investigation. The Bergen County Prosecutor's Office has a fantastic cyber team and computer analyst team. They are some of the premier experts here in New Jersey, and we partner with them all the time, and we bring them devices, and sometimes I say, I don't know what I'm looking for, can you find it? And within days, I have the information that we need to bring forth a case.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And Sheriff Curtin, same question. What is your advice for victims in terms of preserving the necessary evidence for law enforcement, which would support proving an act of cyber harassment or cyber stalking, or even just technology-facilitated stalking, such as the use of an Apple AirTag or similar tracking device?
In this day and age, you have to appreciate those who work in the same occupation that you do. And I'm so happy the lieutenant is next to me because I'm going to repeat everything he said for the most part. But what he said is true. I mean, there are instances, and this is a close friend who, I think last year, marital issues, her husband had a difference of opinion. With Sharana Gas, as a friend of mine, she called. We both go there, and we found an AirTag under the license plate. And then from that, if I'm not mistaken, with the AirTag, you can identify, correct me if I'm wrong, who owns that AirTag. So yes, the importance of taking it to a law enforcement practitioner, or if not the local, to the prosecutor's office, is critical, because now, even before you take it, if you call law enforcement and they start the reporting mechanism, then it can lead back to the person who owns the AirTag, and you can start the investigation that way. Excuse me. At the end of the day, it all comes about communication, recognizing other training. For example, if you have an Apple AirTag and you have an Apple phone in your car, Apple, by default, will recognize that AirTag is in the car, especially if it doesn't belong to you. So it's little things like that has to be shared. And as the judge said and the lieutenant said, this will provide for more information to address that, and hopefully the potential of what may come from it, from being stalked, followed around, and so forth.
We're also joined tonight by Detective Alexa Gadetti, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office Cyber Crimes Unit. Detective, you've heard a lot of conversation tonight about digital abuse, cyber harassment, and the use of technology. What can law enforcement do to investigate online cyber crimes, and how can that assist in prosecution?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the women who shared your stories tonight as well. So as for how law enforcement can investigate crimes online, internet-facilitated crimes, I like to say that it all begins with the evidence. By that I mean, think of other crimes. What's evidence you may need? Is it a weapon? Is it DNA? We need evidence as well for our digital crimes. So something that we always start with the victims, and that we tell the local police departments, is that figure out what the evidence is. So what's the crime that's happening online? Is it calls? Is it through text messages? Is it through social media apps? Figure out what the crime is and document it, as well as any identifiers that you can get from this person that is targeting you in some way. That's the date, the time that this is happening on. Calls, it's the call duration, it's any unique identifier to that account. That's the evidence that we need in order to begin our investigations, to even say, okay, this is what we have. Then from there on, many law enforcement officers, as well as the detectives in the cyber crimes unit, are trained in investigative techniques from where to go from there. A lot of that begins with legal process, so we reach to companies that accept U.S. legal process. We can send subpoenas for information. We can also send court orders for more detailed information. It really will depend on what the crime is, but that begins with you, with collecting all of that evidence, saving everything. I know that was mentioned earlier. How do you save it? You can screen record it, you can screenshot it, save everything. That is what we need to begin our investigation.
And Detective, how can people avoid becoming victims of cyber stalking and cyber harassment and related crimes?
I would say the best way of trying to avoid it is your own personal awareness. So I understand that we may all not be the most technologically savvy. I understand that. But being aware of your own privacy settings on your phone, on your social media accounts. Who are your friends and followers? Are they people that you like, that you trust, that support you? Are you still friends with any exes that you should not be friends with anymore? Or maybe if you're not friends with an ex, are you still friends with their family and friends? So really being aware of who's on your accounts. Are you sharing location with anybody? Whether that's through a Life 360 app, through Snapchat, Snap Maps. Really, it's your own personal awareness. And if you're not sure like where to look for that in your phone, on your devices, ask someone who does, because I am sure you have a friend, a family member, a colleague who can look through your phone and figure out, is your Bluetooth on? Is it connected to anything? So really just being aware of the accounts that you have and who's involved in your life.
And Prosecutor Adoni, what can be done where a survivor has obtained a protective order or restraining order, and the defendant continues again and again and again to send messages from spoofed phone numbers, fake profiles? So the response the victim gets from law enforcement is, unfortunately, there's not enough here to prove that this is a violation of the restraining order because we can't prove it is coming from the defendant.
We try. So from our end, through our victim witness advocacy in our office, we communicate with the victim, and we always tell the victim, report it. You must report it. Any violation, if you think it's a violation, report it. Yes, when they come to the police departments, sometimes they would run into the answer, it would be very hard to prove, but they try. We all try. They consult with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, with Cyber Crimes Unit, because behind every spoof number, there is someone, but maybe we'll be able to find that out. So we, as Detective Gadetti told you, we serve subpoenas, we serve process, we try, we really do. And my message to all victims always, never delete, save the communication, save anything and everything you have and provide it to the police. A lot of time I find they go to the police and then they go back home with the very information not revealing what it is that's on their phone, on their social media, on their messenger, on their apps. Save it. Without that, I cannot do anything. I cannot prosecute a case without the evidence. And that's so crucial and so critical. So that's what I always say. Never, if you have any doubt, always report. We'll take it from there and we'll do our best to try. But if you don't come to us, we can't try.
Same question for a municipal prosecutor, Savvy.
Yeah, I want to repeat what Madam Prosecutor just said. Bring me what you have and we'll talk. And if there's anything more we can do to help the victim prepare for going to trial, if that's what they would like to do at the municipal court level, we'll talk, we'll figure it out, and we'll have some time to do it because these trials and court dates don't happen immediately. So there's always time to figure it out.
Also, just add something to that.
Please.
I think that it's also important for survivors or victims in the moment to just disconnect themselves and not stay in contact with that person as much as they can, blocking and things like that. Because sometimes they'll use the things you say and the replies that you give against you as well when they're filing their own cases against that person and things like that. So it's also important to try to disconnect yourself as much as you can because they will use those things against you. Any little thing, any little reply, any message, if they threw shade online and they said something that might not be directly to you and then you do the same thing back, they can also use that against you. So just wanted to also add to that.
And Carol Weissman, we've talked about a lot on the criminal side with technology-facilitated abuse. Can and how can a victim obtain protection through the court?
Well, we've been talking both about criminal and civil situations, as the prosecutor and Judge Bottinelli said. I want to clarify as well and follow up on Judge Bottinelli so that those who may be watching here understand that when the police come, first of all, and a report may be made and you've gone to the police station, just because there may have been that report made, that does not mean automatically that there's a restraining order that may be entered. You need to follow up and ask for that restraining order to be entered. The restraining orders, as Judge Bottinelli indicated, are in the civil division of the court, and there are several what we call predicate acts. You can obtain a restraining order either through the police department or by going to the local courthouse in Bergen County. It's here in Hackensack, and you can get the restraining order. Restraining order is the initial process and will be handled civilly. That doesn't mean that there's not also what we call the criminal case that's running concurrently with it. And I know that can be confusing, but to get the protections of a civil restraining order, to turn it into a final restraining order that's filed through the civil courts, initially the standard is just probable cause, and then as Judge Bottinelli indicated, for the next level you need to show preponderance of the evidence along the lines of getting support and assistance, and a plug for legal services, which is where I work. You know, I often tell clients, and I'm telling people out here today, if you had a toothache or you had a problem with headaches, you're not going to do brain surgery on yourself. You're not going to pull out your toothache. Don't think just because you got a restraining order temporarily, you can just walk into court and get your final restraining order. It is a process. There are rules of evidence and procedures, and we're here to help as part of your support group, and you definitely should seek out that help to get the final restraining order that will give you the protections that you want to seek, especially in all of these cyber cases and the sexting cases. It's really important, and again, I can't emphasize, don't delete evidence, keep everything there. I always suggest to clients, if you can download it onto hard copy, do so, because the courts, when you present it, are going to ask for hard copy. You're not going to be able to present your phone or your iPad or whatever other methods you're using. So keep that, and you'll hopefully be successful. Thank you.
Lil?
Yeah, I have a question actually for the panel. The vast majority, I shouldn't say, many clients, let's put it that way, that we work with never go to the police. They don't seek restraining orders. They're not pressing charges. They're trying to get the support they need to leave. And probably there's more of that group than the ones that are in your systems. So does anybody know of who can, so I've had many clients say to me, I think he knows where I am all the time. I think he's following me. He may have a GPS. But if they're not pressing charges, they're not going to have the privilege of having a prosecutor or somebody sort of investigating that. Is there some organization that anyone knows of that will help? You know, a couple people said it on the panel. If you feel something, if you think you're being followed, you're probably being followed, right? So where can you go then to get that? I've had people say to me, he's texting me, I think, but I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know how he's intercepting. Like, who's helping those folks that aren't ending up in the legal system? If anyone knows.
I have kind of an answer.
Please. Yes, please.
So I think in this conversation, I think it's important, you know, we're talking about what are all the things that victims and survivors can do to be able to do these things in the process. And I think we also have to be very honest and reflective as well of what are we doing as Bergen County to do right by victims and survivors. And I think it's important to, when we don't fully know the answers, if we don't know about tech abuse or whatever it is, we need to look to those that do. You know, while our laws are much better than other countries when it comes to domestic violence, there are other countries that their laws are much better than ours. And it's important to look at them, learn from them. The UK does a wonderful job. Australia does a wonderful job. When you look into who the top researchers are when it comes to tech-facilitated abuse, it's not a surprise that most of them come from Australia. So I think it's important to look to those that have done the research and are experts in the field, and to learn from them, and not only learn from them, but make those changes. Now, for anyone in the United States, we can't really go to Australia right away. So we do have some national resources, NNEDV, the National Network to End Domestic Violence. They have really great tools when it comes to tech-facilitated abuse. They have their safety net project, and that's their sole focus, is tech-facilitated abuse. And we also have one that's a bit closer to us, CEDA, the Clinic to End Tech Abuse. They are in the city. They are a program out of Cornell Tech, and they have wonderful researchers there, and just, a lot of very dedicated, not only advocates, but they have a lot of people that have a lot of tech experience, a tech background as well. So I think that's important to look at as well. They do offer services virtually. They're in the city. Right now, they are only servicing the city, which to me is really difficult. Is really difficult because when you think about the issue of tech-facilitated abuse and how prevalent it is in all domestic violence cases, almost, I think it's like 97%, 93 to 97% of all domestic violence cases have some form of tech-facilitated abuse. So for it to be that prevalent and for the resources to really not match that really is sad. It's sad when you think about it. In the United States, there's, I believe, 3 tech clinics. So when you think about all of the cases of domestic violence across the United States, and the fact that there are only 3 tech clinics, how are we really serving our victims and survivors here, right? So I know at ADV, we really are putting in the work to figure out ways to support victims and survivors in this circumstance. We have done some training. I volunteer with CEDA, and I've done the training with them as well, which I'm really thankful for. So I think, to kind of answer your question, but not fully.
No, actually, thank you for saying that. And that's the handout I brought from Net Safety. So that is one resource that's out there, and I did bring handouts for you to all take.
Yes.
I would tech it to you if I knew how to do that. But we have paper copies outside.
Yes, they're wonderful. They're a wonderful resource.
And Lil, I'm also going to jump in. I mean, I know it sounds like the obvious, but I've had clients literally just go back to Verizon or, no, T-Mobile, because they go where the phone was purchased. And I wouldn't go back to Apple because I've had clients try that, and Apple is, great company, but they're useless in helping clients to track it. But I have had clients come in and say, I know there's something on my phone, I can't find it. They go back to the Verizon store, they go back to the T-Mobile, and that's something you can tell your clients. And they've actually gone in and found the tracking devices and explained how and what they need to do. And if they need to get it unlocked, then what may have to happen is your client's going to have to maybe come to court to get some kind of an order or a file for a restraining order. But there are some simple ways, believe it or not, that can help that won't necessarily involve all of us.
Lieutenant Petrie, but isn't there a caution here where we don't want the victim to wipe out the evidence on the device before they talk to your department?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the low-tech ways to find if you're being tracked is if you have a thing that's in the car, bring it to your trusted mechanic, or bring it to a mechanic outside of who you normally use, because I don't want to say that, I want to make sure that your privacy is being held. So if you think, your partner's the one who placed it there, but your partner's the one who always brings the car to get the oil change and the tire rotation, maybe you bring it to a different mechanic because they know the car's best. They know all the hiding spots. They know where everything will be. And then if something is discovered, then at that point, call the local police right away, and we'll come down and we'll start our processes. If you come to our police station, We have our Sally port, we bring the car into the Sally port, we start recording right away. We start documenting because, as the prosecutor and the judge will also tell you, that the chain of evidence is very important in this. We want to make sure we preserve that chain of evidence. We document how we found it, where we found it, and everything around it, serial numbers and anything like that. So if you do find a device, it's very important that you call us right away and either come into us or, obviously we'll come to you where you're at, and we'll make sure that we start that preservation of evidence, which is so important in this whole system.
Thank you. Kate, what's your advice for a survivor who comes in and is trying to co-parent with another parent but is getting inundated with barrages of text messages, again, from alternate phone numbers that are difficult to link back to the defendant? How can that case be handled?
I mean, if it's from alternate or an anonymous phone numbers, then it might be harassment, and that might be something, an entirely different issue. As to co-parent, that is a huge thing that I could talk for hours about. Generally keep your answers sort of simple and such, but speak to a domestic violence advocate or a lawyer about how to co-parent with somebody who is abusive. But I also really want to talk about how we've been talking a lot about saving your evidence, saving your pictures. And I know there are some survivors that, might feel embarrassed about some of their evidence and everything. Look, I've sent my husband pictures that I do not want my boss ever seeing or anything, but I would encourage them to still go to law enforcement and still go to people like me and everyone else on this panel, because we're not going to look at those and be like, oh, what was she doing? We're going to look at it for the evidence as opposed to being like, what was he doing sending that? And I also then at the same time want to tell everyone in the audience and as society that if you ever do come across a picture that, of not to look at it, be like, oh my God, look at this picture of this person, but instead be like, wait, why am I seeing this picture? Who's sending it to me and what are their intentions? And to put the blame where it belongs, and that's on the person who's sending that kind of stuff. Yes. Thank you.
Detective, in what way can law enforcement assist where a victim has her profile essentially impersonated? We've heard of cases recently where the offender of domestic violence has gone as far as create alternative profiles, alternative email accounts in the name of the victim to impersonate the victim. What is law enforcement's role in uncovering the true source of those profiles?
So the answer to that is fairly similar to my first answer, just about how we investigate our crimes to begin with. So we are trained with our investigative techniques in trying to figure out who the person is behind the account. That is always what our goal is. As I mentioned before, it starts with the evidence that you can provide to me. I do want to touch on what she mentioned about sometimes feeling uncomfortable about handing over a phone or what might be in it. I do want to assure you that the detectives in the cybercrimes unit, other law enforcement, detectives in our digital forensics lab, we are professionals. This is our job. All day long, we look at cell phones, tablets, electronic devices. We are never there to judge. We are only there to find the truth. And we can't find that truth unless you provide us everything that you have. So as for trying to uncover the real identity of profiles, we do our best. We take everything that you give to us. Again, it's those unique identifiers that have to do with this account in question, the account that you believe is impersonating you. What social media profile is it on? What social media app? Are you able to give us the username, the handle? What can you tell us about this account that can help us figure out who this is? Then using legal process, as I mentioned before, there's subpoenas that can give us basic subscriber information, or there's court orders that may give us more detailed information. So it's really about what you can compile as evidence and provide to us, and then we do the rest of the work to submit our court orders and figuring out who is this person pretending to be you. Be super careful, again, about are your profiles public? Are they private? How are these people getting pictures of you to begin with? And that goes back to your own personal awareness of who are the people that are on your accounts. Try and make sure that most of your social media is private, that the only people that should see any of your photos that you post are people that you trust, that support you. and that'll really help with that.
Thank you, Detective. And to follow up, I'm going to go back to Teresa. Teresa, you spoke earlier about walking in silence, which is a very powerful expression. But here's my concern. How can a survivor walk in silence, albeit and become safer online, but without surrendering themselves, without giving up their own sense of identity, without basically being re-victimized because now they can no longer have a social media presence that they otherwise might have if they weren't being harassed or stalked?
Thank you. In all, what I'm hearing, everything that's being said, and what I would tell someone is basically, if you are trying to leave the abuser, take a break from social media. Take a break in putting information out there. Get someone you trust that you can share information with, and just start the process of becoming safe or getting somewhere safe.
And Lil, how can a survivor heal from the abuse?
Wow. Healing is, somebody said it, I think one of the survivors shared about healing not being linear. You know, I'm 66, I'm still in therapy, and I'm shocked sometimes at like how some things still come up, right? So I think finding a trusted friend, therapist, advocates. I thought about a client once who shared information with a trusted, what she thought was a cousin that would be supportive, and the cousin was very judgmental. And I said, listen, you got to find people who are going to, the detective said it, you got to find people that are not judgmental of whatever you did. You didn't cause abuse. So I think healing is about reducing isolation as much as possible, but with carefully choosing who you reduce the isolation with, right? Which is interesting because that's what about social media is so public, right? So you want to reduce the isolation, but you want to do it safely. So I like your suggestion. My Facebook thing, now I'll probably get 1 million hits, is way too open, and I don't have anything that I'm ashamed of, except for the fact that 10 years ago I was about 80 pounds heavier, right? Somebody goes back far enough, they might see how fat I was, right? But actually I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't be so open. Maybe I should just have that with my friends. So I've learned something from this too. And so thank you for that. And I admire what you're doing because my daughter was caught up. She's young. She's a young adult now. She was caught up with stuff that she did. I don't think there's probably a young person who hasn't now done something on social media that as they get older are like, what was I thinking? And so I appreciate what you do because I think it's a scourge right now. And as the judge said, I'm worried about my grandchildren and children and kids today. These kids today. Anyway, I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'm getting tired and hungry, so sorry.
And Mike, how can survivors stay safer online and avoid the sexual-based image abuse? To what you spoke of earlier.
How to stay safer with sexual-based image abuse? That is a really hard question. But some things that they could do to stay safer is to, again, just continue. I think a lot of what has been said, just continue to just have the people that you trust and know that, they wouldn't do those type of things to you online. Have those people in your circle. Try to stay closer to those people. Try to be as private as you can in some ways, right? And I was thinking about it for survivors that might feel that disconnection of even being online or not being able to go online. You can also have anonymous, profiles and accounts as well, and you could still add the people you love and let them know that, hey, this is what this is, and don't share who I am to other people, and still connect in your own more private way, just as like an alternative, right? If you feel like you still want to be on TikTok or still be a part of all these other things, you could still see these things, just maybe a little bit more disconnected. But again, I just think it's important just to be surrounded, even on social media, not just in real life, by the people that you can trust most, that care about you most, and that will respect your online presence just as much as they would your physical in-person presence. So yeah, because it's very difficult when it comes to things like that, especially if it's happening in schools and it's a case of bullying or things like that. Some people will just go out of their own way to cause harm with something like digital abuse and digital sexual abuse, right? So just being able to surround yourself with those people is really important. Yeah.
And Savvy, what are the warning signs? What are the red flags of digital abuse? What should victims look out for before things escalate?
For that, some of it is written right into our statutes in New Jersey. The harassment statute talks about the repetitive nature of the harassment or communications being made anonymously or at inconvenient hours. So if somebody's sending you text messages or Instagram private message, direct messages, or something of that kind at 60 clips at 2 o'clock in the morning, common sense dictates that that's harassment, and also our laws provide that that's harassment.
And Detective, what is your message for the community on how to stay safer online?
So my main, takeaways that I would say for how I would like all of you to stay safer, passwords, keeping your passwords safe, as in do not share them with other people, even your partner. I don't really believe there's a scenario where your partner needs to have your password to your social media accounts. Keep those private to you. You don't want to be getting in trouble for anyone logging into your account, an account that you're responsible for, and them posting or saying something under you. So not sharing your passwords, making them something hard for people to guess. A lot of times we tell people maybe make it a phrase, alphanumeric, add some characters to it. Have a password manager. There's whatever phone you have within the App Store, there's a couple that are in there. You could just type in password manager. They're really good, and you can keep your passwords safe and secure in there. That way they can all be different, all unique, all fairly long, and you won't forget what they are. So passwords, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, combing through your social media. Think of all of the social media that you have and who is on your social media. Who are your friends and followers? I encourage you to take the time and look through your entire list of people and say, do I know who this person is? Do I like this person? Does this person like me? Do I have a reason to have this person on my social media? So I really believe that that's a good way of just protecting yourself. Social media and the internet is supposed to be a positive place. It should never be something that makes you feel negative. And a lot of that comes from the pages that you follow and the people that you're watching on social media. Having multi-factor set up, so like a two-factor, if someone tries to log into one of your accounts, you should get an alert maybe on another device telling you that someone tried to log in. So think about, did I ever share my password with someone and now they're trying to get into the account? Having a multi-factor set up will stop that before it happens. And then really just not clicking on links and really only communicating with people that you know, people you've met in real life, people that are your friends, and people that you want to communicate with. Not strangers online who are trying to beat you or make you feel uncomfortable in some way.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Petrie, for a survivor who is hesitant to call the police because he or she is nervous about what to expect, please explain what an officer's training is in domestic violence and what a victim can expect when they call the police for help.
So, initially in the academy, we get our initial training for domestic violence, the laws, the mandatories, the processes. When you come to the department, you go through the field training program. That's when you're paired up with an officer, and you'll see firsthand how a department handles the officer will see how the department handles a domestic violence incident and go through the processes from beginning to end. There's annual training that every officer is mandated to have. So we go through annual training. We go through case law updates. That's a critical part of this whole process in order for us to understand how the courts have changed the playing field for officers and evidence and statements. Miranda is always evolving, so we need to be one step ahead of that. What a victim, when they call a police department, what I want my officers to do is to be compassionate to them and to treat them as if they're their own family, right? And when a victim comes into our office and We bring them into our conference room to speak with them. I tell my officers, take a breath, right? Don't just go towards the paperwork. Oh, I got to fill out this form. I got to fill out that form. I got to get through this. Take a breath, listen to the person, get the whole story. I want victims to know that we're here to help them. We're here to give them the power. I tell, anytime we're doing a restraining order, I always tell the victim, this is a piece of paper. The power is not in the paper. The power is in you. I cannot help you prosecute a violation of this piece of paper unless you tell me. So I need you to be your own advocate. So we're going to be your champions as well. We're going to go there and give you the resources. We're going to refer you to all these wonderful people down this row. We are the starting point. These are the people who are going to bring it home for you, right? Right down to the judge sitting in the middle. He's your best one, right? We're going to be your best champions. We're going to tell you. We're going to demystify everything for you. We're going to be honest. And sometimes honesty goes both ways. And sometimes I have to tell victims, if you don't do this, you're going to die. You're going to die if you don't take this next step, right? And so that's what, in my department, and I hope departments all across New Jersey, because we all have that same training and we all go to the same police academy, I hope that every single one of us treat our victims in that manner.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And Sheriff, it's incredible that you join our symposium every year, and thank you so much for doing so. But I think more important than you just being a law enforcement officer is the fact that you're a father and you have daughters. And we heard Clarissa's story earlier, and we heard Clarissa describe the moment where she had to describe whether she was going to live or die, and she made the decision to live. What would be your advice to your daughters on how to stay safer in this world, and in particular, how to stay safer in a world where technology is facilitating abusive behavior?
My daughters are 28 and 24, respectively. In their lifetime, I started them off early. One, you have to have an open line of communication with your parents. Father to daughter, I challenged them even more so to have that line of communication. I also explained to them what not to accept as a young lady. Sometimes we witness things, and I know they've witnessed things, and I've been very fortunate, thank God, that they'll come to me and have any discussion about anything, about their friends. One of their friends recently got married about 3 years ago, subjected to domestic violence. She told me so I can have conversations with the young lady. But for me as a father, open line of communication, explaining to them that love is not in the hand. Love is in the conversation, in the discussion. Once you start placing hands on someone, love is out the door unless it's a hug. And that's what I told them. The warm embrace, you'll feel the love or compassion that someone have with you. But then again, once that physical side comes in, and not talking intimate, I'm talking about that physical abuse, I make sure they understand. Speak up, speak loud, and at the end of the day, don't worry about who you're offending. You're protecting yourself. So that's what I do for my young ladies.
Matt, can I jump in
Please.
here on what the lieutenant said about a restraining order being a piece of paper, which it is, and it's an enforceable order. But to all the victims out there, it's actually a holistic process. The restraining order will be as good as the person who's going to follow it, which is why, in addition to that, I will always advise my clients, get a safety plan, call ADV, call Healing Space, call the Women's Center, start with a counseling group, create a family of support around you so that, number one, when you start with that initial restraining order, you're going to get the help and support to follow through to a final, hopefully at the end, and that if you get that final, you still make the plans because nothing is 100%, and you can follow and go forward because you need to take advantage of just not one, but really all of the agencies. You know, what does they say? It takes a village. It's really true to help you all to move forward. That's probably the best way to do it, and look at it that way and know we're all here to help you get through that particular point in your life.
And Karina, we've heard the options that are available through the legal system to get help. But what is your advice for someone who isn't comfortable working with the legal system? How can that person get to a safer place?
I think, you know, to echo what's been said already, talk to an advocate. Talk to an advocate. And, you know, sometimes going through the legal system can be something very scary because it's such an unknown. Talk to an advocate first about what you're going through, and then talk about the rest. Because it sometimes can feel like such a lonely place, such a scary place. And there's so many wonderful advocates that we have here that want to be supportive of victims of domestic violence in Bergen County. Yeah, I think that would be, the legal system can be a little scary.
And Karina, you're much more than just an advocate. You're a New Milford resident. This is your community. What is your message for your community tonight?
Yeah, so I've been in New Milford for, I think, 10 years-ish. I've lived in this community. I think it's a wonderful community, a beautiful small town. I think it's important to always remember that we're hosting the symposium in our town. We should be the example to the rest of Bergen County. You know, we should make sure that not only the victims in New Milford, because there are many. I think it's important to remember them and to support them and to do everything that we can, not only in New Milford but in the rest of the county. But if we are hosting the symposium here, we have to really take on that responsibility and say, if we're doing this here, we need to be the example. We need to be the first ones to say our local law enforcement, or we have resources, or whatever it is that we need to do to really show that. Because I think that's when there's so much isolation in an abusive relationship, you can feel that a victim can feel so alone. And when they're looking to their community for support, and if they don't get that, that's something that can be so disheartening. So I think the message to the community is support one another, listen to survivors, listen to victims, and reach out and help them in any way that you can. And sometimes that's reaching out to the experts to dive in and help.
And Lieutenant Petrie, same question. This is your community. What's your message to your community?
Oh, it's been my community for 49 years. I think I'll take the cake on that one. I know there's probably someone out there that's been here longer. But, you know, 49 years, born and raised, work here, probably will be toe-tagged out of here. And I will tell you that the message that I have to the community that I think Mr. Galasso started with is that it starts at home. It starts with all of us in our own homes, behind our own closed doors, and how we act as families, and how we treat each other, how I treat my wife, and how I treat my wife in front of my 3 boys. I have 3 boys, I'm sorry, right? No, they're a little bit younger, but I tell my boys the same things, opposite of what he was telling his daughters. I teach my boys that it's never right to put your hands on anyone, especially a woman. I tell them that I want them to mirror the relationship that I have and my wife have together. And we work very hard on that. And we work very hard to be good examples for our sons so that they can go out and be good examples and good men in this world. And so I think my message is it starts at home. It starts with all of us in this room, all of us on this panel. And if we could produce good children that respect each other and respect their partners, right? And when things don't go right, I teach my boys that, okay, you had a relationship, it went south, it didn't go good. that's it. It's over. No scorched earth, no revenge, no online torching of that young lady. She doesn't deserve it, and you don't deserve it because you don't want it to happen to you. So, it all starts at home, and I believe that if we could be better examples for our kids, that we will, as this generation, leave a better generation behind.
Matt, if I could just piggyback off of what was being said, especially with boys, I just want to remind folks, right, and it's not to invalidate the amount of women that go through this by any means, because they go through domestic violence and sexual violence and a lot of these things at much higher rates. But I just want to remind everyone that these are things that, of course, also happen to men, also happen to folks in the LGBTQ plus community, happens to everyone, right? And again, we don't see it often, or it's not talked about as often, right, as it is with like relationships that are heterosexual and heteronormative, right? A man and a woman, and it's usually a man abusing the woman and things like that. But there are a lot of other situations, and I think it's fantastic that you're talking to your boys about how to navigate these type of things. But I just want to remind folks as well that these are things that also happen to boys. They also happen to folks that might not consider themselves a man or a woman, to many different people. I just thought that was important to mention as well, because I feel like we tend to forget in the conversation sometimes. Not that anyone here has, but just thought that was important.
And to your point, Savvy, please speak to the fact that intimate partner violence affects all genders. It affects men and women, not just women.
Yes, so my co-panelists have put it beautifully and succinctly already, but just to drive the point home, in my capacity as an attorney in private practice, I've represented men and women and members of the LGBTQ plus community, and I've also represented men who were themselves law enforcement officers. And I want to thank the victims who shared their stories tonight, because that is a real act of bravery. And what I hear from victims that I've represented is that there's a shame and an embarrassment in being a victim of domestic violence. Even though the abuser's actions are the abuser's fault, there's still, I heard this young lady in the front, Clarissa, say that she felt that she needed to apologize to her father that really awful night when you went through the worst of what you went through. So my experience in representing men, including law enforcement officers, was, how did I allow this to happen to me? Why did I allow this to happen to me? I should have known better. I'm a protector. I'm so embarrassed that this happened to me. But I just want to say to the men out there who might be listening, who might be victims, or people out there who have a family member or friend who might be going through this, they're not alone. There's others that are like them. And I hope that they can use that knowledge to come out of the hiding that they might be in that comes with the shame of being a domestic violence victim.
Final word for the panel, Prosecutor Rodoni. Closing message.
Oh, I can't help but agree that the legal system is scary, and I see it every single day. I think that in my capacity as a prosecutor, as an assistant prosecutor and the chief of domestic violence, I hear every single day the complaints and the dissatisfaction with us and the work we do. But then on the other hand, we hear how other victims are so happy with the way we handle cases. So my message is, we do our best. We do our best with what we have. I know some victims are not happy, and some victims are related and very happy. I don't want to say I had the fortune of working with Carissa, because it's not fortune, but Carissa is such a wonderful human being, and she, and I'm going to use the word cooperate, she cooperated with our prosecution all along, and the result was the result that he deserved, and he's paying for what he did to her. Victim cooperation is essential here. Now, sometimes there are situations when victims are cooperating, but we're not getting the results that they want or that I want. And because the laws are dry at the end of the day, we have laws, and we have to prove our cases. We have to prove the elements of a crime, the elements that are, contained in a book It's a book, and if I cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt that 1, 2, 3 happened, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to get a conviction. I'm not going to get justice for that victim. And there's so many victims out there that are so mad at me personally. They're so mad at the prosecutors that work under me, and they're so mad at the victim witness advocate. And my message here is, this is not intentional. We really try to do everything we can given what we have. And if we have the evidence, we'll pursue it, and we will fiercely advocate, and we will pursue justice for that particular victim and really for society, because if it's not for this victim, it's going to be another one that is going to be the victim of the same abuser. So we really work hard, and we will do everything if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Prosecutor. And as I said at the beginning of this program, the focus of our symposia is not our panel. It's our survivors. It's about all of you. So it's only appropriate that the closing remark go to our survivor, Clarissa Murray. Clarissa, please stand up and send your closing message to those watching tonight.
There's amazing help out here. The entire panel behind me. It takes a village. I was able to get out of that domestic abusive relationship, and I think the message is there is help out there. As low as you feel in that moment, you're embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I'm here today to admit, yes, I was embarrassed. I, over and over again, would tell myself I could get out of this, and then I would get scared. So I feel that the message is it's normal to be scared, but there's support all around you. When I said, in a populated city, one of the most populated cities in the world, I felt alone. But there's these amazing people behind me that will help you get out.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank our panel and everyone who's made this program possible. This is about community building. For those of you who don't know, we don't only organize programs here in New Milford with this team. In fact, in a couple days, we're going to be at Bergen Newbridge Medical Center in Paramus having another symposium on domestic violence at 6 p.m. We encourage and invite all of you to come and to attend. Our community outreach as a community goes beyond domestic violence. It's important we come together and address all of our concerns which affect each other, whether it's alcohol addiction, other forms of addiction, intimate partner violence. There's also an event this weekend called the Adam event to help those who are battling alcoholism. The point is this: we are one community, and as one community, we can and we do make a difference. I have to thank this panel, our partners in the New Milford schools, our police department, every agency here, every nonprofit organization, every social service organization. And just as importantly, those in our community, all of you who helped make this program possible. In the business community, those who allowed us to put flyers in their windows, share our flyers on social media. We had support throughout the Bergen County law enforcement community beyond New Milford, including, for example, Hackensack, Rochelle Park, Westwood, and River Edge Police. It really does take a village. So I thank all of you out there watching. I thank individual activists who are here tonight who helped individually create posts, create videos, speak out, and help raise awareness. Thank you, and good night.